The fertile landscape of today's patrol was a stark contrast to the typical dry and rocky setting we were used to. The locals here went about their day, ignoring us mostly. The Taliban had hand-delivered threats of punishment should they interact with the Americans, and the fear was palpable. Our interpreter, Ahmad, approached me as I hung around with a squad mate. "Doctor, hello," he said cheerily. He always had this infectious, positive attitude, despite his country being in a constant state of war. "Hey, Ahmad, how are you?" I inquired politely. He nodded. "I am good, doctor. There is a villager that wants your help, yes? Follow me," he said, and turned to walk away. I shrugged to Ortiz, who was with me, and followed. We approached an older man with a long white beard and balding head. He was sitting on the ground, eyeing me carefully. "I will tell him you are a doctor and can help, okay?" Ahmad explained. I nodded and slung my rifle across my back. Ahmad began talking to the man rapidly and eventually returned to me. "His chest, it is painful," he said. "His breath is difficult," he translated roughly. I scratched my chin. "Ask him if I may examine him," I said. Ahmad came back and nodded. I checked his vitals. His breathing was definitely labored. And upon a quick physical examination, trying to remain as respectful as possible, telling Ahmad to ask for permission for everything I did, I found an infected cut on the man's foot. It was pretty gnarly, and I explained that I would need to clean out the wound for him and that it would hurt. The man pushed me off. "He thinks you want to hurt him on purpose," Ahmad said, as the man began growing irate. "Tell him if I don't do this, he could die or lose his leg or foot at the least," I explained. Ahmad tried to calm the man down, but the man limped away. I sighed. "He thinks you will poison him. Taliban come. They tell these people you are bad, that you poison and kill these people," Ahmad said. I didn't know what to say, so I stood there with him for a moment before returning to my squad. Later on, we mounted up and drove a short distance to the west. The ground had been flooded for the crops, so we parked and made the trip on foot to avoid getting the Humvees stuck in the mud. Ahmad hung around me and Brooks. Ahmad was from a local town, joining the Afghan security force to help the Americans translate as best as he could. He mainly spoke Dari, and these people mostly spoke Pashto, but he did a good enough job. He was getting paid, which was all he cared about. He made it very clear that if the money stopped, he stopped. He had a wife and 3 children, and knew the Taliban would eventually target his town and family for helping us. I wished I could promise to protect them, but I couldn't. When we reached the village here, it was quiet. There were no locals walking around, and most of the buildings had been gutted. "What the hell is this?" I heard Brooks ask Ahmad. He scratched his head. "When the Taliban come, they say to these people, leave or die. So they leave or die." I cocked an eyebrow. "Well, why would they do that?" I asked. Ahmad almost smirked at me. "They plan to kill you, of course, doctor." I felt a sense of dread wash over me. I ran up to Carrington. "It's an ambush, Sarge," I said. He looked at me. "Well, if this is an ambush, they apparently don't know the definition, because there's no one here," he replied. Red chortled. "No, I mean, Ahmad told me so. The Taliban scared off the people so they could attack us." But Carrington shook his head. "Doc, there's no one here." "All right, guys, let's mount up," he ordered. That's when the mortars began to rain down. We scattered, finding cover inside the houses and shacks. "See? I told you, doctor," exclaimed Ahmad, almost in a matter-of-fact tone, tinged with fear, kneeling next to me and Ortiz in a small wooden house. "Yeah, no shit," I shouted. Soon the bombs stopped and the gunfire began. Near this area was a large ridge that led out of the village. The enemy had hidden here and called for mortars once we arrived. "We gotta move," Ortiz shouted at us. We nodded. We dashed from our home to another that held some of my squad. "Where are they?" Brooks shouted. "North, on the ridge," came the reply from Ortiz, who had now deployed his weapon from the windowsill. Again, surrealism hit. This is where a family had had dinner at some point, but now it was a box of death. The interpreter quickly called me to action. "They are moving," shouted Ahmad. I peeked out the window and saw several insurgents rush forward, one of which had an RPG across his shoulders. I tapped Ortiz and pointed, and he began to lay into them. They dodged behind a few rocky boulders. "Incoming!" the gunner shouted as a rocket impacted our house. The blast threw us to the ground, destroying the entire wall it struck. The debris and dust cloud blinded me as I recovered. "Everyone okay?" I screamed. Ahmad gave me a thumbs up, He was the farthest away from the blast. Ortiz picked up his weapon and ran out, followed by Ahmad and Brooks. I followed. "Medic!" came a cry from a nearby house. I exploded into a sprint, bullets snapping by. I bounded into the hut. A soldier on loan from 1st Platoon, named Paul Pulaski, a specialist, had been struck in the neck. I dropped next to him. Wake up, I said, slapping him softly on the face. His jugular wasn't severed, thankfully, but he looked bad. The others were returning fire. "Get him up, Doc!" I heard someone scream. My mind was racing, and I didn't stop to figure out who shouted it. I peered into the doorway and spotted Ahmad. I waved at him, and he sprinted inside. "We have to move him! Let's go!" I shouted. I had wrapped and packed his wound as best I could, but he needed evac. We lifted the wounded soldier and ran to another house that held Carrington. "Bang Bang and Killer are nearby. Devil will sweep around," he barked as bullets embedded themselves in the facade of the house. He saw the wounded and cursed. "Is he gonna make it?" he shouted at me. "It's bad, he needs evac now," I shouted back. Ahmad smacked my helmet and I turned. Brooks was waving at me from across the way. Shit, I thought. Ahmad dashed out before I could stop him. "Fuck! Ahmad!" I shouted, chasing after him. That's when the worst happened. Ahmad was wearing a bulletproof vest, but it was merely a Kevlar. It would not stop a rifle round. I watched as Ahmad was lifted off of the ground and back down again. I ran, grabbed his arms, and dragged him behind the house. "Ahmad!" I screamed beside myself. "Doctor, very painful," he groaned. I ripped off his vest and the bullet had torn through his side, missing his organs by inches. "I need to shoot you up," I said, pulling out a syringe. He pushed it away. "No, bandage me. We must work," he said through gritted teeth. "Crazy son of a bitch," I thought as I tried to patch him up. He stood with great effort. "Your friend is hurt. Let us go," he shouted as he jogged into the house. I sighed yet followed. Inside the house, there were a few soldiers from Killer Squad, slumped against the wall, and another returning fire. Ahmad collapsed next to the man and weakly motioned to me. "Doctor, here he is." I knelt and checked the soldier's vitals. Weak pulse, labored breathing, blood pooling. He had been hit in the shoulder, so I ripped off his sleeve to expose the wound. I winced. It was a bad one. I patched it up as much as I could and tried to rouse the soldier to consciousness. "Hey, wake up!" I shouted. "Incoming!" Another soldier screamed as he threw himself down. A rocket collided into the wall of this house too. Ahmad threw himself on top of me as the rocket hit the ground outside. The wall somewhat crumbled, but we were wholly protected. The injured soldier stirred awake, to my relief, but we were all covered in dust and debris. "Ahmad, you okay?" I asked as I stood. He pulled himself up. "I cannot let the doctor die. That would be bad," he said through the pain. I noticed his bandages were soaked in blood. "Fuck, Ahmad, damn it," I said angrily as I redid his dressings. "Do not worry about Ahmad. Your friends, they must be your concern," he said, half annoyed. We heard more gunfire as Bang Bang and Devil rolled in. "Speak of the devil," I muttered. The enemy was quickly routed or killed, and we all grouped up in the village. Ahmad stood next to me during the debrief. "Ahmad, you okay?" I asked after. He was pale but still upbeat. "Oh, Ahmad is strong. No bullet stops me," he said, but then his legs gave out. Red and I helped him back up. "Ahmad, you're seriously an insane motherfucker," Red said. I nodded in agreement. "Not all Americans are bad, eh? Taliban? Nah. Americans help," he proclaimed. Our platoon sergeant approached us as we made our way to the Humvee that contained a squad from 1st Platoon. "The fuck happened to him?" he asked, motioning to the translator. "He was playing medic with me," I said, sort of chuckling. No, Ahmad is just a translator. You are doctor. Keep your job, I do not want it," he said, and we laughed. As Ahmad climbed into the Humvee and I walked back to my PSG, I pulled him aside. Ahmad warned us of the ambush and he helped me through it. "He's a crazy son of a bitch, but he's no coward," I explained. My PSG nodded. "Good, because I heard that Alpha had a translator that was a Taliban informant. Nearly got them killed before they figured it out." I shuddered to think, instinctively looking at Ahmad, who met my glance and waved cheerily. "I don't know. Something tells me he's one of the good ones," I said. Ahmad was taken to our hospital where the doctor fixed him up. He was back with us within the week, against my own recommendation. He needed rest and to heal, but he refused. These people, they must know to not fear you, doctor. You cannot change their mind. Maybe I can, he would later explain to me. We hung out often whenever he joined us or was at our outpost, and he was genuinely an honest and upbeat guy. Maybe that's why I always tried to cheer the guys up, because of Ahmad's infectious happiness. He would grill me about modern combat medicine and seemed interested in the ways of the doctor, as he would say. I once gave him an old medic bag I had. I had taped it back up to fix the rip in it, filled it with bandages and some simple things, and bestowed it on him as an honorary medic. He was ecstatic. "Wait until my wife sees this. She will think I am a doctor now," he laughed. I had written his name in Sharpie on the bag with the words, "Approved by Lifeline." He would wear that bag everywhere he went, and he even used it once to help me patch someone up during a firefight. I remember one of the last things he told me. We were eating dinner and I had given him his favorite MRE. He was in love with the lasagna meal kit. "One day I will take my family to America and visit the doctor," he said, to which I laughed. "I'd love to have you over," I responded. "You are a great healer, not just the body but the soul." "You fix the broken things of the body and soul," he explained, putting a hand over my heart, smiling. "I'm just doing my job, Ahmad," I said, but he would shake his head. "We are called to greater things than jobs, doctor. Your calling, it is here with these soldiers, your friends, and these people in Afghanistan need you. The Taliban are no good, maybe America's no good, but you are good," he said, throwing a thumbs up. I laughed. "Okay, Ahmad," I said as I returned the thumbs up. We high-fived as we continued our meal, laughing. His dream was to move to America and start a new life there. Maybe try to go to school and work in the medical field. He wanted his children to grow up to be doctors, to help others. He was seriously in love with his wife and kept a small picture of her in his pocket. He absolutely loved his culture and always dreamed of showing the rest of the world just how beautiful Afghanistan could be. And he always had that damn smile on his face, even during the worst moments. Ahmad tragically would lose his life in an IED ambush while patrolling with 3rd Platoon. When I heard of the attack, I asked about casualties. When I was told that only Ahmad lost his life, and that as soon as he was killed, the attackers withdrew, I felt it was a premeditated assassination of sorts, a traitor being taken out, according to the enemy. He knew the risks of helping us, and yet he remained vigilant, fiercely believing that he could persuade the local Afghani population into trusting us and turning from the Taliban. I kept a Polaroid of him in my vest pocket, along with the others that had lost their lives. He was one of us, possibly the best of us. He wasn't a soldier, just a guy who wanted to improve the situation for his people. And I was furious that he had his story cut short. He definitely was one of the good ones.